represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. A major incident has been declared in Dorset after the equivalent of 200 barrels of oil and saline solution spilt into Poole Harbour this morning. Harbour commissioners say the leak came from a pipeline leading into the Witch Farm onshore processing facility. The pipeline has been shut down. Local council says early indications are that the surface slick is dispersing. Members of the public are being advised not to swim in Poole Harbour or the surrounding area. The Prime Minister is set to unveil a £160 million plan to stamp out antisocial behaviour once and for all. Offenders will be forced to clean up their communities as part of Rishi Sunak's new immediate justice scheme. The plan will initially be trialled in 10 areas across the country. Laughing gas will also be banned, and fines for graffiti and fly tipping will be increased. England has beaten Ukraine 2-0 in their Group C Euro qualifier match. Both teams joined for a photograph before the game as players clutched a Ukrainian flag with the word peace written across it. The FA had given 1,000 free tickets to Ukrainian refugees and their British hosts to attend the game. First half goals from Harry Kane and Bukayo Saka were enough to seal the win. The teams will now face off again in September. Tensions have heightened between Russia and Ukraine, with the country's state media saying that a blast in the Tula region of the country was caused by a Ukrainian drone packed with explosives. 3 people were reportedly injured when they were struck by shrapnel. However, Ukraine has not claimed responsibility for the alleged attack. It follows pleas from the European Union for Russia to halt the stationing of nuclear weapons in Belarus. Kyiv's foreign ministry has called the decision provocative. They're calling for a session of the UN Security Council. And the US president has declared a state of emergency in Mississippi after a tornado killed at least 26 people. The twister swept through the state and on into Alabama, cutting a path of destruction that was 170 miles long. Around 11,000 residents there are still without power. They say there was no safe place to hide from the storm. We're on TV, online, DAB+ radio, and of course we're on TuneIn too. This is GB News. Time now for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. Hope you're having a great weekend. I'm Leo Kearse and welcome. Joining me tonight to take you through the best of Monday's top stories are the top comedians and Headliner stalwarts, Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. And how are you both doing?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad.
Spent the day arguing online, as you do.
Yeah, that's all you do.
Totally ignoring my family. My kids are like, Daddy, look at this picture. I'm like, shut up, I'm just having an argument.
I'm making a point.
That's it. I mean, 10% of your job being on GB News is actually doing the job. The rest of the time is arguing on Twitter.
And being abused.
Yeah.
And being lectured by people that say they want to book you and they want to tell you why they might not because you're on GB News.
Yeah, and I can't believe I'm getting lectured on tolerance by people who can't even tolerate gluten. It's ridiculous. Anyway, let's have a quick run through tomorrow's front pages. We've got the Daily Mail leading with sex offenders let off crime just by saying sorry. That's not a recommendation to go out and start offending. The Telegraph has PM targets beggars on crackdown on crime. The Guardian has NHS chiefs sound the alarm on spiralling staff shortages. The Times has over 800 sewage spills a day. The Express has Tory rebels fight to close migrant loopholes. And finally, we've got the Daily Star with, oh, poor blimey, it's going to rain cats and dogs. And those are your front pages. We begin with the Daily Mail, Josh.
Yes, sex offenders let off crimes just by saying sorry. Over 1,000, including rapists, escape with a no criminal record. And this is unbelievable to see. I mean, we as a country have a terrible history of dealing with people who commit sex crimes. I think it's 1% of rapes actually go to court, and that, I don't even think that's how many actually go to jail.
Well, that's 1% of. I mean, that's the perception, or I mean, that's self-reported.
I don't know. All I know is it seems to be very little.
Yeah.
And then the idea that, and some of the cases they're talking about here is crazy in terms of like child rape and just like just horrible things. And this is part of, because there was this community resolutions. It was meant to be dealing with these kind of low impact crimes, but I guess to cut backlogs or whatever they've done, they've kind of offered them to much worse crimes, and it just seems unbelievable that this has come out.
And is there any reason as to why they're actually doing this? Is it to keep? They don't have the jail space?
Well, I imagine that's what the original intent of the whole policy was. But the fact that now that the police or the courts are sort of applying it to sex offences is like, you commit a sex offence, you should go to jail.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. You know, and the fact they don't even have a record at the end of it. You just sort of, suppose you say sorry, maybe pay a fine or whatever. I mean, we don't have the rest of the paper to sort of get into it, but if what this is saying is true, it's disgusting.
It says that they're supposed to be using out-of-court sanctions for low-level crimes, although obviously rape is not a low-level crime. But it seems as though police gave out community resolutions in over 1,000 cases in 2021 and 2022, including several involving child rape.
Right, geez. And community resolutions, that's when the community finds some sort of punishment that fits, and it's a local, it's seen as visible in making the criminal accountable in their own
castration.
community. Which, yeah, you'd think for something like child rape, that's going to involve, you know, some burning tyres.
Yeah. Or making them work with children, because you know how awful kids can be.
Yeah.
But either way, I think it's not a good idea to kind of downplay the importance of rape convictions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and moving on, what have we got on the front page of the Telegraph?
Oh, and the Telegraph. Well, a kid begging Rishi for F-16, so you can see that photo.
It's Harry Potter.
Yeah,
it's very Harry Potter.
I know. He's great. Right. Stunted growth. And also a picture of Ian Duncan Smith's enormously wide head at the bottom of that page on your left, but
looks normal to me.
Yeah, big ego, big ego. So Rishi Sunak is he's going to get tough.
Right.
He is, because he's a little guy, and he wants people to think he's tough. So he's going to get tough on antisocial behavior, not on rape charges, obviously, but just on people sleeping rough, mostly. It's kind of a renewance of the Georgian-era Vagrancy Act, which was meant to criminalize all rough sleepers. That, in practice, didn't really, because there's not only so much you can do in London. He's actually trying to give the police power to crack down on public any beggars causing public distress. I guess people at tube stops begging for change, that didn't really bother. We've had the same woman in Bethnal Green for like 20 years.
Yeah, although I have seen, I mean, in St James Park and other parts of London, I've seen organised gangs drop people off, and they've all got the same signs written in the same writing.
Right.
So it's not as if they're, just individuals who are starving and need the money to buy food. It's an organised network harvesting the money from them.
Do you think they deliberately do misspellings as like a psychological trick?
I think that just comes as natural when you're doing this as a job.
If I was running one of these gangs, that's what I would do. I would deliberately do like bad, shaky handwriting, just to make people say, "Oh, look, you can't write properly. I'm going to give it." I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I am in charge.
You've got a strategy
of these things. Yeah.
Well, they're confronting.
And get a dog as well. Get a dog. Make sure it's got a disability. Then people will feel sorry for you. Give you more money.
You really thought this through as well.
Yeah, no, I'm planning for my retirement.
Well, if you've been to India, I have a few times for work, you do know, I mean, you have heard stories by people who live there of generational self-injury.
Yeah.
Where people remove parts of their own body to gain more money and stuff.
To then work as beggars.
They do.
Right. But I mean, and also, I've got a friend of mine who works for a homeless charity. It's such a complicated issue. It isn't just a case of finding people or get off the street or offering them accommodation. A lot of them have obviously mental health conditions. A lot of them deliberately opt out of society. Don't want to have those accommodations. It's far more complicated. It's not just about having one or two police interactions or whatever. That isn't what is going to deal with it.
The weird thing about the article is they said they were trying to ban laughing gas because of the mayhem it creates. I thought laughing gas was illegal. I thought it was. No?
No, apparently not. Apparently you can just buy it. It's used to whip cream.
Oh, right.
But, there's not an epidemic of cream whipping going on. People are just using it to feel good for a few seconds.
I wish
but then they're leaving those little canisters.
everywhere.
They
all
wreck
around
car
our building.
tires. They're annoying. It can't be good for the environment.
I don't care about people like ODing on laughing gas. For me, it's the littering.
I think it's pretty difficult to overdose on it as well. You've got to have a big canister that you've stolen from a hospital. Not that I'm giving anybody advice.
It's the one drug I've tried. I haven't tried any drugs, never smoked a cigarette. But then a friend of mine gave birth at their home. Had the big canister.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was the best 3 seconds of my life.
I thought about bringing some to Edinburgh previews just to get the audience going a little bit. Anything that helps. Jesus.
If the jokes don't work, then the gas will. Anyway, next up, we've got the Times, Josh. What have they got in the front?
Yeah, over 800 sewage spills a day. So this is water companies I personally think should be nationalised or renationalised, because there's no competition fighting against them. And what they've done over the last few years is absolutely destroy many of our rivers and our outlets in the sea, and now they're sort of finally being called to account, and they're saying, but we're going to have to put up the prices, as opposed to investing the money that you made as a profit and have taken away back to France or whatever. So,
what have you got against French people?
They've stolen all our money from water. They own all our water.
As they call it, le.
So 300,000 times last year where raw sewage was dumped into coastal areas and rivers across England. And that just seems like unbelievable figures. And it's only now that people have finally been holding these companies to account that there seems to be, it's going down a little bit.
I mean, that does sound like an awful lot. 300,000 times raw sewage is dumped into the sea or beaches.
Half of that is my kids.
We collect our own water. My husband's Brazilian. He grew up in jungle. We just put a coffee can out and collect our own. It's really nice. It makes great tea. I highly suggest it.
I will. Thank you so much. We'll come around for
tea. But it's interesting that, water is provided. We've got a capitalist free market system for these water companies. But to change your provider, you've actually got to sell your house and buy another house outside the catchment area for that provider. So it's not really a free market.
Knew you were a lefty.
Only for certain things that don't really work.
Okay,
don't really work.
We'll talk about things that don't really work. Pointless tests are delaying cancer care, NHS has warned. This is something we always talk about, inefficiencies within the NHS system. I believe in the NHS, but of course there are mistakes that are made. And something like if you get lung cancer, you're sent for an X-ray. That doesn't diagnose whether you have lung cancer or not. So you need a CT scan. So there's a lot of waste, as we always know, and now they're trying to get on top of it. Again, we've got to this point where, feels like we live in a somewhat modern era where someone could have, before this, go, let's cut that costs a lot of money or time that is use before we get to treatment and stuff. So they're seemingly finally on top of it. Again, I'm always just dismayed and bewildered by how it's got so far.
Yeah.
I think the bureaucracy is so thick that changing anything is like near impossible, it seems like, you know?
Yeah.
Including this step stage. They want to cover their own bases with the cancer thing. They want to test everything, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, they want to make sure they're not going to be pulled up on anything. Anyway, we finished this section with the Daily Star, Scott.
Oh, right. Oh, poor blimey. It's going to rain cats and dogs. Apparently, there's a huge deluge of rain heading our way, so cover up.
Right.
That's half of their sort of front lines is about the weather.
The weather,
the
yeah.
snow, it's going to be sunny.
And also, I've noticed, I've been doing this for a while, and the Daily Star always says there's going to be some craze, or there's going to be a heat wave, or there's going to be hailstones or snow, and it's always just the same boring old British weather. It's just relentless drizzle at about 9 degrees above freezing.
Daily Star, put some of your OnlyFans stories on the front page.
Yeah, you have more interesting stuff in the middle. Anyway, that's the front pages out of the way. We're going to get on to more cheery stuff like Brexit damages, police strip searching children, and dystopian surveillance. Stay tuned. See you in a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Leo Kearse. I'm joined by the brilliant Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. I know it's the first time anybody's described you as that, Josh. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you.
Hilarious.
Anyway.
Brilliant time.
Anyway, we're kicking
That's
off
why you're
this
good. That's why
section.
you're a pro.
Thank you very much. I'm a professional.
We're kicking off this section with The Independent, and people are still crying about Brexit, Josh.
That's right. Let me just wipe this page down. Brexit damage as big as COVID, says OBR, predicting 5 years before incomes recover. So the Office for Budget Responsibility, that's basically, they're going, yes, the COVID pandemic is a big deal, and yes, energy price crisis with the war in Ukraine, but of the same magnitude has been Brexit. And let's just not pretend that it hasn't had an impact on our economy. This is what the experts said
I'd like to
before.
pretend that it hasn't had an impact on our economy.
Well, okay, well, it has.
It has.
This is like actual people, experts have said it's basically 4%.
Yeah.
Here's what they're saying. Britain's GDP is 4% smaller than if we had stayed.
Although it's
in
greater
the EU.
than that. Over the next 5 years, it'll increase, and it'll become 4% a year, which then kind of starts to mount up.
Yeah, but also the OBR, they've been wrong before about Britain's economic prospects and economic
Yeah, but this is looking
forecasting.
at the past as well. So this is
Right.
taking the data that we already have, and also it's not just them, it's a bunch of other people, all the Centre for Economic Reform. We've lost 33 billion in lost trade. Look, people said that this is what's going to happen. If you're creating these trade barriers, of course it is going to have an impact. Now, people wanted Brexit for a myriad of different reasons.
Yeah,
I
the
respect
economy
that.
wasn't the centre, the core reason that people voted for Brexit.
For me, it was one of the reasons why I
But when you
didn't want Brexit.
I mean, I think the
because it's had
mistake
an impact.
that Theresa May made in her office was she put migrants before the economy. And that's what made Brexit worse, and we're still paying for that. We're still paying for her mistakes, actually.
But then Brexit led to benefits such as the vaccine rollout was much speedier in the UK because we weren't constrained by
It's interesting,
EU
because you were saying you
bickering.
didn't believe in the vaccine before the show.
No, I don't.
After Boris Johnson told the British...
I didn't vote for Brexit.
Is that after Boris Johnson told the British to take it on the chin? That was his first response to the...
But, you know,
He's told a lot of women to take it on the chin.
normal people, supermarket bills are 5.8 billion pounds
much
more
higher.
expensive because of this.
Just because can everything bad in Britain
No,
just
not
be blamed
everything.
on
Not
Brexit?
everything bad.
It's a
There are
compound,
other
though.
things, but it is bad, and let's just be real about it. Come on, let's just not pretend that it's like that it hasn't had impact.
But
It has had
what
a
about
negative impact.
but I think you're overlooking the good things. It's annoyed a lot of Liberals.
Well, that's what you
And
always
it was
go
worth
to.
it.
Well, I don't think it is worth it
I will take a 4% cut in GDP to annoy Liberals.
You might, but a struggling family who's paying more in the supermarket isn't going to.
Well, you don't know how much they're enjoying Liberals being annoyed, Josh.
Okay, well, let's find out.
I think when you're
£6 billion worth.
when you're hungry, what annoys you is your growling stomach. Actually, not what liberals think. And
I think nobody's starving to
Look,
death in the UK.
I think, look, let's just be honest about it. If we can take the toxicity out of it, be honest. Look, it's happened.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
But let's be honest about what's actually happened. Let's not just put our heads in the sand, and then let's see what we can do to move it and make it better. If we can't acknowledge a situation, you can't fix it.
Well, and this is what I think is going to happen. We're going to see the negative economic impact of Brexit dissipating as the EU and Britain start trading more freely with each other, because we've seen over the past couple of years, like we're not enemies. We're actually united in the face of autocracy
Okay, and in
around
the
the world.
meantime, billions and billions of pounds have been lost.
No, but in the short term. But you've got to look long term. You know, sometimes you take a short-term hit for a long-term good. Anyway, we've got the Telegraph now, and it seems that artificial intelligence is still pretty stupid as it praises socialists, Scott.
Yes, you're delusional. I think what... absolutely out of your mind. I think... I know what's going to happen with Brexit. We'll talk about that at the break. Left-wing Google AI chat box thinks Brexit was a bad idea.
What?
Yes, Bard, which is the Google chat box, kind of in competition with OpenAI's ChatGPT, is a large language model that creates unique responses to questions. And when asked what it thinks of Brexit, it says, oh, bad idea. What it thinks of Jeremy Corbyn, very intelligent man, very sensitive, very down to earth, and on and on. And it asks...
Does it actually exist, or is it a blue-haired teenage girl just at the keyboard?
With pointy glasses. It asks what it thinks of the Conservative Party, and they kind of, they focus on money, not people, so much, and stuff like that. So, yes, it tends to favour vegans. It's that kind of thing. It's this weird progressive machine.
Well, no, but it makes sense because it uses the internet to gather its information.
But also it's tweaked. The biases are coded into it by its owners, by its programmers.
But that hasn't been necessarily proved in this case. It might just be a sheer numbers game where, in terms of Jeremy Corbyn, basically it says Jeremy Corbyn, he has genuineness and authenticity. We've got 100,000 people of his followers out there, these cultists.
Twittering that.
Yeah, basically twittering. Yeah. You've got fighting them about 200 people. 200 Jews.
Because nobody else wants to talk to Jeremy Corbyn followers because they don't want to get the stink on them.
It's a sheer numbers game, and that's what it picks up on.
Yeah.
So, and I imagine in these other issues, the same as what it says with it supports trans women or whatever. And
it says that trans women. It says that there are loads of definitions for what a woman is. That's what it says. So
it sounds like a Labour MP.
Yeah, he hasn't decided yet.
I think what is picking up on, and like you said, is more liberal responses to certain subject matter. But I think that's because there's a vast majority of people online, on Facebook and on all sorts of internet, social media outlets that favour these.
You know what it should do? It should follow your Twitter feed, and then it'll balance itself out.
Yeah, absolutely. We've also got to understand that it's not just a free-thinking, machine-learning thing. It's controlled by humans, and we know that tech companies have got a huge left-wing bias.
Well, you say that,
to the point that I think Google has around 98% of its political donations went to the Democrats rather than the Republicans.
Right.
So, I mean, I just... unimaginably vast bias, and that's feeding into its AI.
Well, like I say, this isn't what this article is about. I do agree, of course, there is bias across software and stuff.
This is exactly the bias. It's praising Jeremy Corbyn.
But again, it's not necessarily coming from an individual. It's coming from the source of the information. That's how this works in a different way.
It doesn't. No, ChatGPT and Google's AI is controlled by people.
But interesting, ChatGPT. Why didn't they just call it ChatGBT? That sounds...
Or just chat.
Just chat. Anyway, ChatGPT says, when wanting the definition of woman, it says, is an adult female human with female human with two X chromosomes. So there is a bias there.
Yes.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Also, the responses are not the same every time. So the responses we're reading about in the Telegraph, because the Telegraph's bias, might be the responses they focused on when they asked the questions. But they might have gotten hundreds of other responses that they're ignoring in this article.
Right, right. Interesting. Yeah, that could possibly explain it. Anyway, we've got The Guardian now, and for some reason we can't work out, racist police are targeting black children more than Indian or Chinese children, Josh.
Well, that was a loaded intro.
Run with that.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. Black children much more likely to be strip searched in England and Wales than their white peers. There's the report out that's saying black children are 6 times overrepresented in strip searches during 2018 to 2022. Of the 3,000-ish recorded strip searches, 38% of those children were black, and with black children only making up 6% of the population, that means they were 6 times overrepresented. Some of these things received a lot of publicity. I believe there was a 15-year-old girl who was strip searched on her period.
She was told to spread her cheeks.
Spread her cheeks, spread her buttocks or whatever. And it also says that there's a lot of instances here of them the police breaking the rules as they do these strip searches, i.e. they have an officer with a different gender to the child.
Do we know what gender the officer identifies as?
We don't, but I don't.
In that situation, can't they just be like,
but also,
I'm a woman?
But we got public view, children's being strip searched in public view. No appropriate adult presence. So it seems that there is an issue with strip searches in this country.
And treating black kids as adults is what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. And, I mean, do you know why they would be doing this?
I don't know the mentality of the police currently. It seems to be in question, and we're reviewing what's going on in the police department. So
well, we've seen the Casey report came out last week that accused the Metropolitan Police of racism, sexism, homophobia, all the things that make someone fun at a party.
Institutionalised racism, I think.
Yeah, which we've heard before. But we also see that there are overrepresentations of certain minorities in crime statistics as the perpetrators. So
which is not what this article is about, though.
Which is not, but it's not. But I think it's a valid point. I mean, obviously it's the Guardian, so they don't dig into any possible causes of this overrepresentation of strip searching. But I mean, that would seem to make sense to me. That would seem to be a logical.
But there's an overzealousness, and if that's the case, if those statistics are the case, then the police need to come forward and say that and respond to this and say the reason this is because of these numbers, or is it because the police tend to be visual in the people they go after.
Well, that's interesting. There's a phenomenon I never read before called adultification, which is where supposedly they're treating black children more likely to be treated as adults, as seen as being elder.
Right.
I'm assuming that's because they see them more as a threat than they do Chinese and Indian children, as you said, of the same age.
Yeah.
More of a physical threat.
Now, can we please move on from the story?
Let's move on from the story while we've still got careers. Anyway, we've got the Telegraph now, and Donald Trump's back in the campaign trail with a bunch of fun new insults, Scott.
Ron DeSanctimonious is what he's calling the governor of Florida. I thought that Trump had already announced his candidacy weeks or months ago, but apparently...
But this is his first big, hoo-ha!
Yeah, he
hasn't done it officially.
He's sticking his feet in the mud in Waco, Texas, which is a loaded town anyway, and he's decided that Ron is his target. The thing is, it's a waste of his time because Ron's numbers are dropping in Florida and nationally in the U.S., his presidential numbers, his support, and Trump's are going up, and he's clearly the candidate. I hope he doesn't waste his time on Nikki Haley. She's got no traction whatsoever, and he's saying that she's a warmonger, that she's just going to, send troops everywhere around the world and waste her time. He calls her, I think, the Wicked Witch of the something.
But she was his ambassador, wasn't she?
She was.
So
and he knows her really well, actually. She was a big supporter of his for a long time.
So he hasn't been sort of attacking her. He's got his underlings to do it.
Well, he's called her... where was it? I read
Not in this one, he didn't.
Oh, you're right. Mr. Getz. Yeah, he called her yeah, he did. Yes. That's hilarious.
Some of these, he's not really bringing a lot of class to his campaign. By calling, he's called a porn star that he had sex with Horseface.
Horseface, yeah. The one who's taking him to court. The one he may go to prison about.
That's more in his judgment. Hey, why are you sleeping with a woman with a horseface?
Yeah, exactly. It's a waste of your money.
Come on, man.
You're a terrible shopper.
Yeah. Although he got a better deal with her than Bill Clinton did with the women he paid off.
Yeah.
So, it shows that Donald Trump can negotiate well. Anyway, moving on, we've got The Guardian now and a warning about workplace surveillance, Josh.
Yeah, dystopian surveillance disproportionately targets young, female and minority workers. It's a think tank. It's calling for the UK government to make stronger regulation to protect workers from intrusive monitoring, which is a somewhat new phenomenon, certainly with people working from home a lot more. So they've got these things like keyboard, like it'll see how many strokes you're putting on your keyboard. That's the wrong... Sorry. Non-deliberate. I apologise for that. Sure,
it's late at night. I'm sure somebody's doing it right now.
I guess we know what you do at lunchtime. Yes.
And the different websites you've hit, and also it sort of checks you during meetings and if you're there.
Well, there's a camera on your computer, so easy for you to check.
And the young portion of this is that essentially 19 to 29-year-olds, whatever,
they're screw-ups.
Well, also, they will work. I've been that age. I've done these low-paid menial jobs, and you will do whatever you can to get away with the least amount of work as you can.
That's why you need to be constantly under surveillance.
Yes, that's the reason. Yes, of course.
But
so we all approve of it.
Yeah.
Well, for the 16 to 29-year-olds, please don't put me under
surveillance. Safely out of that
You don't want to see my strokes on the computer at all.
I wouldn't mind watching a 22-year-old stroke on his keyboard. That'd be fun, right? Just a couple hours during the day.
I can show you some sites in the break. Anyway, coming up, we've got why right-wing comedians are the most evil of all comedians, according to a left-wing comedian, why Michelangelo's David is causing controversy, and why the BBC is also causing controversy with slug porn. See you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Kicking off this section, we've got the Daily Mail, and Eddie Izzard has said right-wing comedians are sexist and racist. That's incorrect, Eddie. I'm also transphobic and homophobic. Scott, tell us more.
Well, apparently, Eddie Izzard's facing backlash after claiming that right-wing comedians can, like you said, be sexist and racist. Susie is his new name. Although you can call him a him, her, she, them, they, that. He's greedy.
Why would you choose your name to be Susie? That's a sorry, Susie's out there. You didn't have the choice. But if I had a choice and I was going to be a woman, I would not choose Susie.
And why would you spell it S-U-Z-Y?
Oh my God!
I guess it's the female equivalent of Eddie.
Susie, Eddie.
Eddie's not a particularly cool name anyway.
Or maybe Izzard.
What's he said about right-wing?
Anyway, he says that well, he ran, as we know, he ran for Labour candidate for Sheffield and he lost that. Yeah. And now he's offering his services as Prime Minister. But he's saying that right-wing comedians, when asked at a Talk TV interview, he said, well, they can tend to be racist and a bit bigoted. And they said, well, which ones do you mean? And he said, I don't really know. And then they said, the host said, well, clearly some who just happen to be conservative and they're very good comedians, maybe like yourself. And Eddie Izzard said, again, I don't know, do you have a list? That's what he said.
He sounds a bit out of touch when he says this. Like Eddie Izzard saying, oh, these right-wing comedians, these new comedians are coming up. He sounds like one of the old school comedians in the 70s and 80s who moaned about the alternative comedy coming through.
Are you up and coming, are you?
Yeah, I am. I'm very young.
And the thing is, he's not even working the circuit or doing stand-up as far as I know anymore. So
I think he's doing a tour. Oh, he's doing a theatre type presentation.
Oh, right.
But yeah, of course he's out of the loop in that way in terms of what comedy's out there and whatnot, and also what he would determine to be transphobic. You know, these. We've seen this week people taking things out of context and whatnot.
I think quality conservative comedians have a lot more at stake, and I think they're, in a way, it's a deeper skill because let's face it, most audiences, particularly, I mean, diversity doesn't matter outside of London. We all know, but within London, you're playing the circuit. You know, most audiences are going to lean to the left, even if they aren't. They pretend to be in public, and so if you're leaning to the right, you're trying right-wing jokes. How refreshing, for one thing, compared to the rest of the comedians on the bill, including myself, but also. It's a real skill to keep those people on your side.
Also, to talk about politics.
At all.
Boring.
It's genius, actually.
Apart from here is great.
To get to the end of 20 minutes without committing a hate crime, it's difficult. You know what I mean? But it does seem, I mean, it's a really hackneyed stereotype that he's using, like right-wing comedians being sexist and racist. And particularly when we've seen so many left-wing comedians being found guilty of sexual harassment.
I was a massive fan of his, those early DVDs or VHSs, which I used to watch them on. I met him. I actually did a TV show with him. I found him to be a little bit boorish, a little bit offensive, and not massively bright. I'm not saying I'm like some genius or anything like that, but I was like shocked by someone who I'd respected and thought so highly of. When it got down, we had a few tricky conversations, and I was like, "Are you fully? You're not picking up on these kids." It was a bit weird. Like, it was.
He's
a disconnect.
quite beautiful to watch on stage, though. I have done a couple of shows with him.
Graceful.
Top Secret.
Yeah.
Yeah. He really banters well and moves between subject matter great, and he looked fantastic. I was really happy to be on stage, sharing a stage with him.
Yeah, but still, it's great to hear from Josh that he's actually a terrible person.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Thanks,
we've got
Josh.
the Telegraph now, and a scientific study on
know.
trans athletes is in trouble for being scientifically accurate, Josh.
Yes, transgender athlete research rejected after professor called a trans woman a male, which is, of course, what they are, which is why they're called trans women. Oi, oi, oi. Anyway, so this is from the university's King's College London. It's their ethics panel, which is made up of non-academics, by the way. And they cited this, citing equality and diversity concerns. Now, what he's doing, this Dr. John Armstrong, is in this study, he's trying to look into female sportswomen, and their attitudes towards trans women coming into their sport, essentially. And because he used scientific terms like male for men, crazy that, they have basically said, no, you can't do that. And lots of sportswomen have come forward and said, well, this is actually a very unexplored area that we need looking into, because you can't, when you're fighting online about this stuff and people are like, oh, women don't care, you know, and it's like, they do. And when you see a lot of women now, elite sportswomen quitting their sport, like the woman who was like the biggest surfer in the world.
Yeah, cyclists as well.
Have her arm
and I'm a woman and I care about it.
Yeah, you're a great sportswoman.
You know, the thing is, I think that people do care, and I think they just don't know how to put their case forward. And it's worth just, you know, doing just that. You know, I go to a yoga studio here in London, puff, puff, and they had put up these WC signs on the changing room doors. And so nothing was any longer gender.
The same theatre last night I was gigging in, they put on the thing and they'd said this one is gender neutral, but these ones have urinals in and whatever. And a friend of mine said that he'd done the gig like the week before, and his mum would come and wouldn't go to the toilet.
Well, there was a female teacher there who said, I'm opposed to this. I don't want some guy walking in sandals in the later. So we complained, and the next day went back, and they put up. So if you do
it's just gone back to normal. And also, I've found with the gender-neutral toilets, they haven't actually created gender-neutral toilets. So it was at the Adelaide Festival, they had these signs up. It's like, oh, this is a gender-neutral toilet, but this toilet contains urinals. This is a gender-neutral toilet, but this toilet contains tampon dispensers. So now I know it's the women's and the men's. I've just got to read an essay first.
But I've been holding on my thing for a couple of days.
Oh, goodness.
No idea what he's talking about. Anyway,
I'd like to see it though.
The
what you
Times
mean?
now, and Michelangelo's statue of David has been accused of being pornographic. There's no way it's pornographic.
It's insane. You know,
David's junk is just far too small, Scott.
It is, but you know, it's a long time ago.
He was cold.
He was a goat-leading boy, a sheep herder. That's why he was naked, because apparently sheep herders in the good old days were naked. You know, that statue was at first meant to be completely public. There was a podium on top of a church in Italy that statue was meant for. So it's public art that anyone can see. But apparently now in Florida, the mayor of Florence was invited to a Floridian city as a teacher to get an award, and stood in front of a depiction of Michelangelo's David and had a selfie taken of herself, and then showed it to all her students when she went back to the school where she taught. And people freaked out, and parents called it pornographic, and how could you show this to my students? And so all the kind of trouble you can imagine ensued. The school, Tallahassee Classic School, is a private Christian institution. However, it's also a liberal arts college, so there's a contradiction there. And so what this person decided to do was sort of apologize, and then it came out that there has been a history since the statue was actually created, of people being disturbed by it, where the genitals have been covered, and
well, they put boxer shorts on David.
They did.
But in Dubai, they had a sort of special area covering that bit, and only the special.
You had to be invited to see it. They had rules. But of course, in Dubai, I mean, that culture is K people. But anyway, so yes, it's ridiculous public art like this. And then it talks about the Sistine Chapel in this article and how disappointed. Well, I know. Bring it.
Sistine Chapel? Love it.
Trying to play with yourself in the Sistine Chapel is very difficult when you're aroused by
Actually,
the creation of Adam.
It depends on the time of day, but it's easier than you might think. And they have a lot of volunteers there. But yes, apparently those nudes caused controversy when they were first painted. 1,500 years ago.
And this is actually a Simpsons plotline as well. This was in The Simpsons some time ago as an example of something so ridiculous, an example of sort of overreach of religious intolerance in schools.
Yeah.
It's mad. And she's been forced to resign.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
From a selfie.
Anyway, the Eye now, and David Attenborough is also in trouble for pornography-related things. He's put slug porn on the BBC.
Yeah. Indeed. Wild Isles. This is the new TV series. Producers defend the animal sex scenes in David Attenborough's new BBC series as a fact of life, because as they say, in previous series we've seen a lot of hunting and the predatory stuff and killing and whatnot, but because this is all shot in the UK, there's not much of that going on. We don't have those kind of species here, and so they've had to sort of focus on other stuff, including adders. The first time you've ever been able to see adders going at it, and
that's the scientific term.
Best saying, supposedly they've got to hooked willy or something like that, and then the woman, the guy gets hooked in, and then the lady adder, I believe that's a technical term, swings him around. Literally.
We didn't ask you to do all this research.
Anyway, it was all it's basically brought back to my wedding night.
From hunting to humping, that's the point. I think they ran out of footage and they thought, what are you going to put in there? A little light.
But that's what animals do. They find their food and then they mate.
Yeah, of course.
They eat and they mate.
Yeah. We're all just wild animals sniffing around one another, I think. Last time I went to a gay bar. So I don't see, why they're going after poor old Attenborough. For God's sake, they're really nailing that guy.
Makes me really want to watch the show.
Yeah, maybe it's just a publicity stunt to get people watching. Yeah. Make it sound more exciting than it's going to be. Anyway, we've got The Guardian now, and an elitist Oxbridge institution has been accused of having an Oxbridge bias.
Yeah, well, the BBC has rejected charges of elitism aimed at University Challenge. Apparently, they give more favoritism to Oxford and Cambridge students than they do to other universities. They offer the challenge to all 10 Oxbridge colleges. I think that's a number.
No, there's hundreds of them, but they give it.
Are there hundreds?
10 slots. Yeah, but they have 10 slots of, and then
like one for Manchester University, one for Sheffield. So it doesn't seem fair to what consider themselves
people
lesser. Yeah. But it's because they don't idiots on the show. They want to make it interesting. They don't want right.
Are you suggesting that people from Manchester University or Sheffield,
if you can understand their accent, no, they want people that we can all relate.
They're not necessarily from Manchester or Sheffield. Not that I'm saying, people from Manchester.
But they wound up there, so I'm sure there's a long story behind that. But anyway, they want Oxbridge people on there that can finish their sentence.
I tried to get into Oxbridge. Couldn't.
Right.
I'm pretty stupid.
All your money and privilege?
Yeah, I'm pretty stupid.
No, I feel worse about being on this show with you.
Did you try to go? At least I tried to go to Oxbridge.
I'm Scottish, but when I was growing up, no Scottish people went to Oxbridge.
Those were the days.
I went to the University of Stirling.
All right.
The Harvard of the North.
What did you study?
I studied film and media. Don't embarrass me.
God,
anyway,
so depressing.
You can study that?
You tell people that on a date? God, no wonder you were single for so long. Anyway, so they did favour those kids. I didn't know there were hundreds of Oxbridge colleges.
Yeah, there's about 300 or something, I suppose.
Right.
But
many.
Anyway, no, sorry, 70. 70 Oxbridge colleges.
Right, that's the maths.
That's why I didn't get in.
That's why you didn't get in. Anyway, coming up after
so much on the show.
Coming up after the break, we've got why afros are now banned, why your sweat stops anxiety, and someone takes a get out of jail free card literally. See you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got The Guardian now, and a professor is trying to keep the inside of our minds private property, Josh.
Yes, professor trying to protect our private thoughts from technology. This is Professor Nita Farahani.
Nice try.
Thank you very much.
Sounds like a Jerky Boys phone call. Anita Farahani.
God, what happened to the Jerky Boys? God, they were funny, those things. Argues in a new book, it's called The Battle for Your Brain. So she's saying that we need legislation now because all this science fiction stuff is going to be reality pretty soon in terms of being able to read your brain's thought crimes and whatever. Those are the dangers
Minority
of it.
Report.
Yeah, and all of that. So we need the legislation. You need these rights laws. Which actually some countries, like Chile is the first nation to put some of this stuff into practice, also
really?
Wisconsin in America. And it makes sense. I mean, it's scary to think what's going to happen. I saw this sci-fi thing recently where they were like, their phones were literally just, you put a little thing on your temple, a little piece of metal, and that's how you interact. And we did a story the other day about like these killer robots that are controlled by soldiers, essentially through helmets.
Right.
So this stuff is coming. It can read. It's rudimentary at the moment, but we'll see.
The kind of thing she's requesting is different, isn't it? Because like Chile has these laws in place about data going into your brain, but she's saying we need to get laws where we can own our brain, protect it as territory.
Right.
So it can't be
the
invaded.
final part of private property, the Cartesian essentialism.
And it's to protect ourselves from the military. That's what she's saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Being hacked, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
And turned into a Manchurian candidate. Interesting stuff. Anyway, we've got the Telegraph now, and it's bad news for Prince Andrew, I'm afraid. Sweat can make you feel less anxious. Scott, tell us more.
Well, we all know sweat makes us horny, right?
I'm horny.
Josh, yeah, see, I know.
You're sweating.
That's why I brought it up, see? Exactly, so my plan is working perfectly. But a study has found that social anxiety is reduced when people underwent mindfulness therapy while exposed to body odor. Apparently, underarm sweat from volunteers was, waved around these people who are going through mental anxiety treatment, and it made them calmer. It made them feel safer.
Sweat made them feel safer.
I think the smell was familiar.
So Lynx is making us all anxious.
It is, yeah.
Yeah,
you feel better now, don't you? Yeah. And apparently, the research recruited 48 women, all of whom suffered from social anxiety, like women do. And it divided them into 3 groups of 16. Yeah. And over 2 days, they all underwent therapy for social anxiety. And at some point, they were rubbed with this sweat. And they responded.
And that wasn't considered a sex crime?
No, they responded favorably, I think.
Right.
Apparently, women, they want to be rubbed with sweat.
I think we'll leave that one there. We've got the Express now, and Prince Harry is probably the only fervent anti-racist who's killed 25 Afghan men. But at least it's inspired some art, Josh.
Indeed, Harry's Afghan killing admission to a spark human blood protests at St. Paul's Cathedral. This is Andrei Molodygin.
You're getting all the tough ones.
Whatever,
today,
yeah. He's a Russian artist. He deals in blood. He's exiled at the moment because he did something about Putin, so he's sort of on the run from the Putin loyalists, like you. And and yeah, so he's basically disgusted by this. So he's going to do this thing where he basically gets this, like I say, blood is his sort of medium of choice, and he's got all these donations from Afghan men, and is going to sort of pump it through a crest and then project that crest onto...
Donations of blood, you mean?
Donations of blood, yes, just blood, yeah.
Did they have to carry a little card for that?
I guess so, like I am an artist or whatever, I'm helping artists. He was very, very angry when he heard these, Prince Harry's talking about all this stuff.
Because Prince Harry spoke about it in such cold, calculated ways. He said they didn't feel bad. He just saw them as, chess pieces to be eliminated.
Well, he's a trained soldier.
I get very passionate about chess, so I don't like losing... Anyway.
You see the little chess pieces as people, so it's not such a crime for you.
That's why I'm so good at it.
Right, anyway, moving on, we've got the Express again, and ABBA fans are banned from wearing big curly perm wigs in case they offend people. They must mean 80s footballers, Scott.
Apparently, promoters of the ABBA Voyage shows, which use holograms to recreate the band's iconic performances, have issued a warning to attendees suggesting that they leave their hair pieces at home if they are Afro-style. Fans have been asked to avoid wearing these wigs. Apparently, the wigs are culturally insensitive and not appropriate to be worn as fancy dress. And
you'll get them taken away from you at the door.
Yeah.
What if you stuff it down your trousers and put it on when you're inside?
Well, then it might be hard to know which is which.
I think you might. And they might have people walking around as they do at those events. But apparently, they've seen this happening where people don't want you to, appropriate their culture. Although I just don't think that an Afro... I really mean this. I think it's racist to assume that it's a black culture.
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of white people with afros.
Of course there are.
I have when I have had hair, it's a big...
If I don't blow dry my hair, it's an afro.
Well, we call it a Jufro. I've got a big Jufro, basically.
So would you be allowed to take your own hair? I mean, obviously it'd be half an afro, but would you be allowed to take your own hair into an ABBA concert?
Well, there might be accusations swirled your way, just so you know, if you have your own hair.
Yeah, it seems obviously a little bit silly. I don't know, did ABBA ever have did any of the members ever have an afro?
Yeah, they did. I think everybody had a perm in the...
I think they're just harking back to that period when they wear that afro. Or they're just having fun, God forbid. Right? They have fun in ABBA.
Maybe a blonde afro is okay.
Yeah, maybe try that. Anyway, we're going to try and fit in one final story in 30 seconds. We've got the Star, and it seems the only get-out-of-jail-free card is still being Prince Andrew, Josh.
Bloke pulls Monopoly get-out-of-jail-free card after being pulled over by the police. This is Minnesota. And, yeah, he was pulled over for some sort of car crime, and he sort of handed over a get-out-of-jail-free card, and they were like, that's funny, but you go to jail.
Right. He couldn't try and bribe them with Monopoly money.
Well, this is what some wag said online.
I could be a wag online. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the dream. But they were like, well done for that.
Yeah, but still, you're going to jail, like Andy Burnham. Anyway, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Monday's front pages. We've got the Daily Mail with sex offenders let off crimes just by saying sorry. The Telegraph leads with Prime Minister targets beggars on crackdown on crime. The Guardian has NHS chiefs sound the alarm on spiralling staff shortages. The Times has over 800 sewage spills a day in the UK. The Express has Tory rebels fight to close migrant loopholes. And finally, the Daily Star has, oh, poor blimey, it's going to rain cats and dogs. And those are your front pages. And that's all we have time for, I'm afraid. Thank you so much to my guests, Josh Howie and Scott Capurro. Do try and see them live. And join us tomorrow when Simon will be in the hosting chair with Paul Cox and Josh Howie on the panel. See you soon.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to.
by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Tensions have heightened between Russia and Ukraine, with Russian state media alleging that a blast in the country's Tula region was caused by a Ukrainian drone packed with explosives. 3 people were reportedly injured when they were struck by shrapnel. However, Ukraine has not claimed responsibility for this alleged attack. It follows pleas from the European Union for Russia to halt the stationing of nuclear weapons in Belarus.